that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine. Hello everybody. I need a weapon. And welcome back to the Halo Expanded Universe. I have a few things for you today. Starting with the Rise of Atriox. Now there's no time frame on here. I've heard people say it's during the Great Schism, which would happen during the games. But at the same time, I don't think the comics ever addressed that. So this could theoretically happen during the games, but I feel like that's a bit too crowded of a time for this to be happening. So I'm going to say no. It obviously didn't happen after, because the Covenant was already disbanded. So there's a 30-year war. It could happen any time in between that. Now, they constantly say that the Covenant's, like, dead, but it's clearly not after Halo 3. So, I don't know. My best guess is that it's just before somewhere, and I'm putting it here, because I don't know where else to put it. But, The Rise of Atriox is a 5-issue comic with different authors in each issue, one of them being John Jackson Miller, who you should also know from Star Wars, and Star Trek, and 100 other things. But Atriox is the villain of Halo Wars 2 and is the background villain for Infinite. Because he's not actually in most of Infinite, but his influence is felt throughout the game. So this is like his backstory, but this really should have been a comic book, or a novel. Like, because the Atriox storyline is a really good premise, it's a really good idea, and the voice actor and the performance is top-notch. He's an intimidating dude, this brute. But he deserved a novel. Instead, we got a comic that, I'm going to be honest, is extremely underwhelming. It's fine. The first issue was more or less what we're told in the games. Then it just kind of goes off this other stuff. I don't know. Not a big fan of it. I mean, I like that in issue 1 that we just get to see brutes being thrown at humans relentlessly. In the first issue, we start with these couple of humans during the Covenant War, and it starts with, you know, like, I don't know, it was like 50 humans or something. And this AI is there, and she's counting down until we get to 1. And then Atriox kills her. But then, of course, Atriox returns from suicide mission alone, and this is researched to be his faith in the Covenant is being completely dismantled. His faith in the leadership of the Covenant is basically gone, and he wants to basically succeed from them. He doesn't like humans either, though, but he wants to join. He wants to abandon his faith and this because he doesn't want to see his people continue to die. And one of the elites tries to kill, not elites, the brutes try to kill him for not being faithful, and he kills him instead. And so, basically, it's just the first issue is their story of how he came to abandon the Covenant, and kind of through his charisma and his persona, he's able to gather a small force of people to abandon the Covenant and join him. Issue 3 was written by John Jackson Miller, and that's just awesome, so I thought I'd mention that. There's a scientist jackal that was interesting, I guess, but also, like, didn't feel very Halo. Also, I'm putting these here because I honestly don't know where else to put them. But these were written like obviously way later. You know, this with the original Bungie era, Halo 1 to 3 and Reach. And Reach came out like 2010, and the Rise of Atriox comic came out like 2018. This feels extremely disjointed from the storyline that's going on currently. I mean, of course, it's going to be regardless because it's about um, a Covenant group abandoning their faith and abandoning the Covenant, and obviously that's canon. That happened, you know, because of later games. So like they left at some point. But I feel like there's a way of writing this where that's, you know, feels more in the tone that it should. I don't know. It just doesn't. If anything, it feels, maybe it's because it's John Jackson Miller. It feels more Star Wars in this issue than it does Halo, and that might be okay. You know, after the original games, to change the tone like that because there's no longer a war. But during it, no matter where you place this, it just feels totally wrong. But you know, Atriox wants people to follow him because you know the Covenant's like, oh, the great journey. You know, faith, faith, faith. But he says people will follow me because they know me, because I keep my word. It's very much of like if you had the Crusades with religious people, then, and this isn't to get political. I'm just trying to make some sort of comparison. Atriox is like Stalin, an extremely atheistic dictatorship, though he claims it is equal, but he is the head honcho. So, um, and Atriox is really good at convincing people that are already doubting their faith into complete unbelief. They're basically the good mythical morning. That was a joke, you know, because they had their deconversion video. Anyway, Atriox is really good at convincing people to his side. But yeah, ultimately, this should have been a novel. This is the same problem with like Union in Star Wars Expanded Universe. Like, oh, we get 6 issues or 5 issues for Mara and Luke's wedding, not like a novel or a short story. We're gonna do a comic. And the Rise of Atriox, one of the best villains they've made in the 343 era. You know what? Arguably better than the Didact because I feel like even with no expanded universe, Atriox is more fleshed out. Like probably one of the best achievements 343 has right now is Atriox, and they give him a 5 issue comic where you can't do too much. I don't know. And retroactive continuity, you know, because this is clearly a story that is being shoved in this time frame when it didn't originally exist. Now, that's not inherently bad. There are ways to make that flow and work, but that really requires a novel, in my opinion, and the right tone. You know, because like you see this like scientist Jackal kind of being like a mad scientist looking dude, and it's just it's doesn't, the tone, the vibe is not correct. So I can't say I really like these comics. I don't hate them, but Atriox deserved better than this. And considering this, regardless if you put this during the games or before the games, the tone should be way different. So, also, there was one issue where a human was fighting a brute and was scared until he found out, oh, you're not Atriox. Okay, we're good. You can do a story about some Covenant people abandoning their faith and leaving so that they could become a big bad guys later on down the line, but don't have humans know about them. This should be a purely internal conflict that only um, the Covenant knows about. No one else should know about them. Because no one else seems to know about them in Halo Wars, which takes place years after this. So, no. Anyway, I don't mean to be negative, but I have to also be honest when I do these reviews. So, Rise of Atriox, it's fine. If you want some additional information on Atriox, the villain of Halo Wars 2 and Infinite, kind of in Infinite, not really, then I can't even say these comics are for you because we don't really gain too much more knowledge of him. But if you wanted more Atriox, here's a story for you. And then we go back to Tales from Slipspace, and we have Hunting Party by Jonathan Gruff. This is the same guy that did the Headhunters short story. And this is just an Atriox tie-in. The Silent Shadow is an elite faction that's, like the best of the best of the best. And they were in Silent Storm, they were in Oblivion by Troy Denning, and they appear in a couple other places. But they go to assassinate Atriox. However, Atriox convinces most of the group to actually join his side. That they already know that their faith is wavering, and they know in their hearts that the Great Journey is a lie, and they should follow him. The leader won't do that, though. And so the Sangheili stabbed their leader in the back, and like, no, this is the new way, we gotta evolve and change. Which I don't know if I like that. I can understand them thinking that he's allowing vengeance to control him, not looking at the bigger picture. But they're elites, so I would have preferred a couple things, and I think Halo Evolved also talked about this as a podcast that does a book club on these books and stuff. Either the leader goes to attack Atriox and Atriox kills him himself, and the other group just stands back and watches, or challenge him to a fight and then kill him instead of stabbing him in the back, because that doesn't feel very elite. But overall, it's a decent little story. I think it handles Atriox better than Rise of Atriox, but it's okay. Again, if you want more Atriox, here's some stories for you. But now we get back to like actual stories in this era, not retroactively things that are now pumped back here because of future games. But these are things you can read about Atriox, or you can just wait to read these till you're next to Halo Wars and Infinite. But I'm trying to do these all chronologically, so I'm placing it around here. But it will be very jarring to kind of get into these if you've been on a flow with this. Alright. Now we get another comic for you. Halo Helljumper by Peter David. So we are now at 2552, which is the year of the game, but we're not at the game yet. This is actually a prequel comic to ODST, because we focus on Dutch and Romeo from ODST. The art. Oh my god, I love the art. I love the art. I love it. I love whenever this type of art is used in comics. And maybe it's not the best art possible for comics, but I can't really explain it. There's something about when there's art like this, and I've seen it a few times in comics. Like sometimes I'll go into the library, I'll pick up a random, I don't know the name of it, maybe somebody in the comments can help me, but there's like a comic where there's this lady, she has like an alien symbiote sort of thing, but it's not like Spider-Man or something connected to her, and her arms can become like size, and then but of course when she morphs or whatever, it's like a very sexual sort of thing there going on, but like her arms can become blades and stuff, and I don't know what that is. I know that's not a fever dream. I know that's something I actually read, but I'm not even talking about that. I just found that, and it has at least the comic issue that I picked up had a similar sort of art style, and I just like it. This also happened, I think, in there's a comic book with Yoda in the Star Wars Expanded Universe during the Clone Wars. I think it's literally just called Star Wars Yoda, and it has a similar art style, and I don't know, something about it I love. Um, but yeah, so the war's raging. Dutch has a wife or a fiance or a girlfriend back home, and she was an ODST too, but she got injured, so she has to like teach back home. and she wants him to transfer so she can spend more time with him. I mean, she's not going to force him to do that, but she would like him to do that. So then it's just a typical ODST mission. We get to see them drop down, do all this stuff, But again, this is there's a lot of action here, and when that happens in a short story, it's hard for me to care, and this is probably a problem for Halo, which is a mostly video game franchise, but if it's not visual, I have a really hard time appreciating action. You have to be a certain caliber of an author and write it in a certain way to get me, personally, and this is just a me problem, invested into action. Because I'm not a big action guy in novels because I find it hard to visualize it. No matter how, the few people that made me like appreciate it are like Drew Karpyshyn when he wrote the Darth Bane trilogy. I just think he wrote it in such a way that I could like visualize it. But a lot of authors can't do that for me. Like Stackpole can't, Aaron Olston can't, Troy Denning most of the time can't for me. So it's just a me problem. But here's a comic, so it's perfectly fine, and I enjoy action. I'm still a guy, so I enjoy action as much as the next guy. But in a comic book, it's easier to digest. But they get to this part where they're thinking they might die, and they've picked up some elites, and they're putting it in front of them to like kind of protect themselves from bullets, because they're not Spartans, they're just ODSTs. And it's a really funny moment where Dutch is like, I need to tell you something, Romeo. And Romeo's like, bro, you don't gotta say nothing, I already know. And I feel the same. And he's like, I put it in my transfer. And he goes, you what? And then explosions come. And it's a good little moment. They end up finding this grunt and interrogating it. And then Romeo promises, okay, well, thank you for telling us everything. You can go before I change my mind. And as the grunt is walking away, Romeo shoots it several times in the head. I'm not gonna lie, I felt pretty bad for the grunt. That's pretty rude. Pretty rude, considering he answered you and you killed him anyway. Um, but also Dutch and Romeo's chemistry, just as like friends in this comic, is incredible. They find a monitor, and the monitor goes, "Oh, I can tell you everything about the history and everything. Da, 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 da. I know everything." And they realize, we don't have time to get this out of here and give it to Oni or to the UNSC, and we don't have time. It's that or the Covenant gets to it. So they blow it up instead. They tell the monitor to kill itself, basically. And the monitor's like, oh, well, that's inconvenient, but okay. So that's really funny. And then Dutch redacts his transfer. He decides he'll stick around. So we'll see them again in Halo 3 ODST. Then we jump to Halo Evolutions, Blunt Instruments by Fred Van Lonte. We basically just focus. This is just a mission where we focus on Spartan Black Team. And a drone shows up and is like, "Hey, I'm defecting," but it's not actually defecting. It's a trap, and that's basically the whole thing. It's a little short story. It's fine. It introduces these characters, and then we get to Halo Bloodline comic. The AI Iona is really cool, and I think she comes back in a short story because I've seen floating around a short story called Saint's Testimony or something, and it looks like she's on the cover of that. So I think she's a recurring character. But she's a really cool AI. She's like red instead of blue, which is typically what you see, and she's very interesting personality. And again, we focus on Black Team, so we get to see them. They're all right. With they grew up, same as John and every other Spartan we've met so far, on Reach. But one of them got into a relationship with the other one. That's a girl. And there's some relationship drama going on. I'll be honest, I didn't feel that at all. I didn't really care about that. One of the themes they tried to harp on was like a family and brothers and stuff, because there's some elites that are over there and they're brothers and they also have a bond and stuff, and they try really hard to make you emotionally feel that, but I didn't. The overall story was a lot of fun, but the emotional moments did not really resonate with me. I don't know. I don't know if that's like a me problem, or I didn't really feel anything was great with the Black Team. I didn't really think they were that interesting of a group. They're all right, but I don't particularly love them. Out of all the Spartans I've seen so far, I'm not a big fan of them. They're fine. not horrible or anything, just not vastly interesting either. But they meet another monitor. This one is 686 Ebullient Prism, and it wants to dissect and study all of them. So that was fun. And the humans and Covenant have to work together to stop this thing. Um, but yeah, Black Team ends up destroying the Covenant because they betray them later on, and they're all a great team. The only difference now at the end of this story that's changed with the status quo is that the AI Iona has realized that now she is a part of a family as well because she's with them now. So nice little story. The art's really good. The action scenes were great. Just Black Team itself, they really try to make me care about them, and I think they're fine. They have enough characterization to be somebody that I somewhat care about, but it also didn't leave an emotional resonance with me to where I was deeply in love with these characters either. Maybe that's just because it was a comic book, but also didn't feel like the short story did too much for them. Now we might have more stories with them in the future. I'm not exactly sure. I do know about a certain story set after Halo 4, which may be controversial, but outside of that, I don't know too much about their story, if they even have a story beyond this. But, the artwork was good, the action scenes were good, the overall plot of it was good. But when it came to the character emotional moments, which are the most important to me, it didn't hit home with me. So if it doesn't hit home with me, then you've kind of lost me, because that's kind of like my bread and butter. But I mean, I'm glad it was more character focused, because that's what I prefer in my stories. But it just wasn't didn't stick the landing with me, basically. But that's basically it. I just wanted to go over a few comics with you guys and some short stories. So thank you all so much for watching. We're heading ever closer to the Fall of Reach and the Halo Reach video game. So I'll see you soon in the next video. And remember, subscribe and join with me so we can finish the fight. Bye bye.